History Project. An interview with Mr. Frank Colvard, known as Mr. Frank. Interviewer Bob McNeil.
This is an interview with Mr. Frank Colvard. We affectionately call Mr. Colvard Mr. Frank. Mr. Frank, what is your full name?
Frank Hendricks. Frank H. Frank Hendricks.
And where were you born, Mr. Frank?
Crumpler, North Carolina. You want me to get this?
Right.
Or you not?
No, you keep that. That's fine. What were your parents' name?
Thomas R. Colvard, Thomas Robin Colvard, and Mary Ida Colvard.
And when were you born, Mr. Frank?
This June the 2nd, 1897.
1897. Okay. Would you mind to tell us something about your boyhood days or childhood days, how things were back in those days? Just anything you want to tell us.
Well, I was about 8, I don't know, remember. About 8 years old, I was struck or knocked out by lightning. I was out unconscious for about 5 hours. But recovered pretty quickly. I was all right the next day, apparently.
What were you doing when you were hit by the lightning bolt?
I was standing on a hearth warming my hands by a fire built by hickory wood, that dry hickory wood. And the lightning put this fire completely out. They had to kindle another fire.
Needless to say, it threw ashes all over the floor too.
Knocked me from one end of the room to the other. I was standing on the hearth, and the fireplace was in the middle of the house, and I was knocked back to the end of the room to the left hand of the floor.
Was anyone else hurt by the lightning?
No one was hurt. My mother was pretty close by, and a brother was close by, but they were not hurt.
What were your parents' occupation? What did your father do?
He was a farmer.
Farmer.
A magistrate.
Would you mind to tell us what some of the games that you played when you were young?
Oh, town ball and running base. And Ankney.
Ankney over?
Yeah.
Okay.
Headband.
What's that, Miss Colvard? You're all right. Go ahead. Come on in there.
Headband school.
Okay, we have a little question here on your school days. Where did you go to school?
Reedy's schoolhouse.
Sir?
Reedy's
Reedy's
schoolhouse.
at Crumpler?
Yeah. Yes, sir.
And what kind of recreation did you have while you were in school?
Well, I've just told you that.
Okay. All right. When were you married, Mr. Frank?
August the 31st, 1921.
1921, year I was born. Okay.
You can remember that.
Right. Who did you marry, Mr. Frank?
Lily Mae Anderson.
Sir?
Lily Mae.
Mae Anderson.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
She's a beautiful woman.
Still is.
And still is. I'll agree with you.
Me as ever.
When did you begin your store occupation, Mr. Frank? What year did you go into
1925, as well as I remember.
1925. You've been in it ever since. Have you always had your store around West Jefferson, or?
No. Started in Winston-Salem.
Started in Winston-Salem. Have you had a store in any of the other counties?
At a store in Wilkes, Forsyth and Ash. Or Ash, Wilkes, and Forsyth.
It might not be a fair question, but which of
Sure.
the counties do you like the best?
Well, I got to stick to my native,
Good.
Ash County.
I think that this is one of the things I admire about you, Mr. Frank. I know that you have the same patriotic feeling, that you love your country, you love your county, you love your wife, and it shouldn't ever be hard to
And my
say
babies.
that you love either one of them.
And my babies.
And your babies.
Yeah.
Right.
She claims them all, and I just claim part of them.
All right, how many babies do you have?
No children.
Over the years, Mr. Frank, one of the things that I've admired about you is the fact that you've employed young people in your stores. And I know from talking to some of them that they have the most respect for you of anyone that they know of, because you've helped them to get through school and you've helped provide their school clothes. And don't think it doesn't go noticed, because they do appreciate it, and either of those kids that I've talked to feel as close to you as anyone's children do to their real parents. Mr. Frank, in some of the conversations I've had with you, we've talked about World War I. Would you mind to tell us when you went in the service, where you served, and so forth? That's just anything you want to say.
Well, I'll start at the beginning. I enlisted in July the 16th, 1916. Went to Camp Glen, North Carolina, stayed about September. Then we were mustered into the federal government, or federal army, and went to Camp Stewart, Fort Bliss, and El Paso, Texas. That's they were outlined. Fort Bliss and Camp Stewart. Leaving out of El Paso to go to the camps, well, you come to Fort Bliss first, and then Camp Stewart was a camp, tent camp, around there or joining Fort Bliss. We stayed there until February 1917. I come home. I served under General Pershing down there on the border and saw him a number of times down there. Also, then when we went in World War I, went with Pershing again to France. By the way, we sailed from my native land today. I was 21, my 21st birthday.
And would you like to tell us some of the places you were in France?
Well, I can't begin to name many of the places, but I was in 5 different active fronts. 2 defensive, 3 offensive. On my discharge, I've got them on my discharge.
Mr. Frank, when you came back to the United States, where did you come?
I come back to North Wilkesboro.
Back to North Wilkesboro. Well, you were discharged probably at Fort Bragg or
No, Camp Jackson.
Camp Jackson. Okay.
April the 1st, 1990. Best April Fool ever had played on there.
Well,
She is the next best.
she is the next best.
Well, thank you.
Her birthday's in April.
Miss Colvard, you come over here, and we might want to ask you a question after a while.
Can't talk.
Well, you do all right. Come on.
Oh, you talk fine. You doing fine. Well, don't let me say the wrong.
Anyway, during the time that you were discharged, how many years have you belonged to a veterans organization?
Well, I was a charter member of Clyde Bowling Post in Winston-Salem.
In Winston-Salem. And, of course, you're a charter member of Post 171 up here
No.
after it was reactivated.
Well, maybe so.
And we appreciate your membership in that. In fact, we declared one day as Mr. Frank Colvard Day, just to tell
Yeah.
you how much we appreciated you being in our organization.
Yes, sir.
And I would just like to ask you this question, so some of the younger veterans can hear this answer. Why should a man belong to a veterans organization, as far as you're concerned?
Well, I've always felt like it was more or less our duty. After being in service, if we entitled to belong, I'd like to see everybody that's entitled to join.
Well, thank you, Mr. Frank. That's as good a question, good answer as I know how to make, because a man's
Well, as good as I
obligation to his country never ends when he takes his uniform off, as far as I'm concerned.
That's the way I feel about it.
And I would say that we all love you for your staying with the organization. And there's not many World War I veterans left in Ashe County, but we certainly treasure the ones that are. And we know that you're the ones that started it, were the founding fathers, so to speak, of the American Legion. And in fact, it was started over there in France probably before you came home. I believe it was sometime in March in 1919 that American Legion had its birth, and I know you belong to the American Legion just about ever since. So we do appreciate you.
I joined the American Legion in 19 or 20. I'm not sure which date.
That was the first year it started, and that's you couldn't get any better than that. Over your years' experience as a merchant, Mr. Frank, how have things changed in the mercantile business? How different is being in the store business now to what it was back in the early days?
Well, it's just almost made a complete change. The things that people demanded and wanted that you kept in the store back in the 20s is not called for anymore. They don't even carry it. Merchants don't have it like that. It's different now. It was bulk mostly then, and like sugar and rice and salt and all those things. It was bulk. No, not soda. Soda was packaged when I started working in the grocery store in the teens.
There's just a few general questions I'd like to ask you. Do you remember the 1940 flood?
Yes, sir. Very well.
The changes that it caused here in the county,
Well,
as far as damage is concerned and so forth?
Well, I don't know. I know all the changes are about all of them that it caused, but I know it was a time for us.
Well, we always think of these natural disasters such as the 40 flood and the snow of 1960.
Yeah.
How did you fare in 1960?
I had to shovel snow to the spring every morning.
Well, I missed getting home one night during the big snow.
How about
And I
that?
missed, let's see, how was that? I missed getting home one night.
Did Miss Colvard come looking for you?
I see
Several
somebody.
did.
Well, that was some time.
And there's one day, I know there's something more I want to say on it, and one day that I didn't get back to open my store.
I know you could almost set the watch or clock by the time you get in of a morning and everything over the years. And that is what is so remarkable in view of your health problem. You had heart trouble for how many years, Mr. Frank?
Well, I had the first heart attack in 1945.
And how many have you had altogether?
I don't know, I've had some mild ones recently, and I've had some, maybe, I don't know the average one a year or not, but I've had mild attacks since. I had two, 1 week, that was week before last, I believe, mild ones.
Well, we won't keep you too long today because
Well,
I
that's
know
all
you
right.
don't feel too good, but is there anything that you would like to add in conclusion to this interview? What are your hopes for Ashe County and for our country?
Well, I hope to see Ashe County progress, or be more progressive and build up, get more industry here. Just got all the best wishes in the world for Ashe County. It's improvements.
And we have all the best wishes for Mr. Frank Colvard and Ms. Colvard. And there's one thing that I'll have to bring in here before we conclude the interview. You've always been a staunch supporter of the Heart Fund in Ashe County.
Yes, sir.
You're probably the most devoted, and I know by years, the best balloon salesman we have. I promised a certain young lady that I'd tell you when you had your window full of red balloons, and she could come and interview you and get a picture of it then, but my memory is not as good as it used to be. And I forgot that I'd made that promise, but you did fill your windows with balloons this year and sold them again, and we appreciate everything you've done over the years.
Well, this is not going to be your tape, is it? This.
You can say anything you want to, Mr.
Well,
Colvard.
that's what I thought. That's about all I've been doing. Between you now and Miss Edwards, I want to bring this in, Bob, about the spelling bee. You never mentioned that. You know, I've been sponsoring it.
Right, yeah.
Spelling
Would
bee
you
here.
mind to just tell anything you want to about the spelling bee?
Well, I started back in about 1940, I believe it was. The sponsoring of spelling bees around the schools. Go around, put on what you'd call an old-timey like spelling bee.
Yes, sir.
And that has grown with me as I've grown. In the last few years, I guess you knew about it, I've been given the champion speller of Ashe County. That's the journal spelling bee now I'm talking about. The last few years, I've paid the winner for Ashe County $25. That's the winner for Ashe County. Then if she won Winston, she get $50. That'd take her to Washington. And if she won at Washington, she'd get $100.
That's really good. That is encouraging. One of the things that the schools really need to stress is spelling. There's one incident about last year's radio auction in which you purchased a silver dollar. Tell us about that. You bid on a silver dollar.
Well, let's go a little bit farther with this school deal.
Okay.
Also give the children in this West Jefferson, 4th through the 8th grade, $10 if they win in their grade. The winner of the grade, just the one winner in one grade, I mean each grade, they get $10. Now I had about 2 or 3 to repeat this year that won last year. I don't remember exactly. Shelby's got that down over at the store. And the same girl won the countywide last year and this year. She hopes to go to Washington. I hope she does too.
Certainly hope she can.
I don't know whether you want her name or not.
I do.
Rita Woody.
Now,
Daughter.
spelling. Can you spell it?
R-E-T-I-A. I ain't glad to spell Rita.
Yeah.
Or, and W-O-O-D-I-E.
She is a fine speller and a fine-looking little girl, and I know you'll be proud of her. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
Now you asked me something else about what I was going to do or say.
Yes, about the bidding on the silver dollar at last year's heart auction.
Oh, yes. Well, the only thing was that Frank Edwards, we called it the Frank's Heart Dollar. Frank Edwards donated the dollar. It is 1881 Old Mint. And it was in very nice condition. But actually the silver dollar was worth at that time about $26. But I wanted to help the Heart Fund out, so I raised it to $376. I got the bid off at $376. I figured the value of the dollar was $26, and I donated to the Heart Fund $350. Does that make it clear? Is that all you want to know about that?
That'd be fine, except for one thing. You donated it back to the Heart Fund this year
Yes, sir.
to sell again.
Yeah, I donated it back. Kept it to donate to the Heart Fund this year.
I've got a little woolly figurine at the house that says, it's got two hearts on it. It says, my heart's on the right side, next to yours. And Mr. Frank, you're next to my heart. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome, Bob.
Mr. Frank, one of the early things that happened in the county that some of the more elderly people remember was the hanging of Will Banks. Do you remember that incident?
I do.
You want to tell us of your recollections of it?
Well,
Anything that led up to it or anything that you'd like to say?